The ballroom glittered like a jewel under the chandeliers, each crystal prism scattering light across the polished marble floor. Gentle murmurs floated through the air, punctuated by the delicate clinking of glasses. Laughter, soft and practiced, danced around the room as elegantly dressed guests mingled, exchanging congratulations and pleasantries. And then Evelyn spoke. "She's just a security guard, really, nobody special," she said, her voice slicing through the hum like a scalpel. The words landed with perfect cruelty, reverberating off the marble walls. I froze. Every eye turned toward me as though waiting for my reaction. My stomach knotted and my hands gripped the small gift I had brought, wishing, not for the first time in my life, that I could vanish. "My name is Clara Donovan, and I'm 30 years old. Tonight at my sister's wedding in the Grand Redmont Hotel in Birmingham, Alabama, I was enduring the single most humiliating moment of my life. Evelyn, my younger sister by 2 years, was introducing me to a room of strangers not as a sister, but as a punchline. I stood there in a simple navy dress, modest by comparison to the designer gowns that glimmered across the ballroom. My shoes were practical, my jewelry understated. Even my gift, the one I had spent hours selecting, seemed insignificant next to the grand floral arrangements, the sparkling chandeliers, the long tables laden with gourmet hors d'oeuvres. And yet, Evelyn's words had made me feel smaller than all of it combined. "You know, Clara works nights at some office building downtown. She basically just sits at a desk and watches security cameras. Nothing too exciting." Polite laughter rippled through her circle of friends, most of whom were military officers and their spouses. Their smiles were thin, their eyes sliding over me with barely concealed pity. I forced a smile in return, but inside a storm was brewing. The worst wasn't Evelyn's cruelty. I had long grown accustomed to her subtle barbs, the quiet jabs over birthdays, graduations, family dinners. No, the worst part was seeing my father, Henry Donovan, nodding in approval from the other side of the room. The same man who had once told me I was the family disappointment seemed to find joy in my public diminishment. Our family had always been a study of contrasts. Evelyn was golden. Every achievement celebrated, every success amplified. She brought home perfect report cards, won beauty contests, dated the quarterback, smiled in photographs like she belonged on the magazine covers. And I, on the other hand, had been the tomboy with the relentless curiosity, always asking too many questions, always reading books when I should have been playing. Our parents never hid their favoritism. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" That question echoed through my adolescence like a mantra of inadequacy, a refrain I could never escape. While Evelyn chased recognition and accolades, I quietly enlisted in the Army after high school. My parents scoffed. "She couldn't cut it in college. Now she's in the military?" They assumed it was a failure, a fallback, a consolation prize. But they didn't know the truth. I had been recruited into intelligence operations, selected for specialized work far beyond basic military service. My aptitude scores and psychological profiles had flagged me as exceptional, and within months, I was pulled into training that would shape the next 5 years of my life. I was learning skills and secrets that I couldn't share with anyone outside my unit. I was Clara Donovan, security guard on paper, and Clara Donovan, senior intelligence analyst in reality. For 5 years, I lived a double life. My work saved lives, prevented attacks, and disrupted criminal networks. Yet, at family gatherings, I was dismissed as ordinary, my contributions invisible. Tonight was no different. I felt the weight of every snide comment, every judgmental glance. And yet, there was one person whose reaction I hadn't expected. Evelyn's fiancé, Colonel Nathan Brooks. As Evelyn pulled him closer to introduce me, there was a flicker of recognition in his eyes. I didn't know him. We had never met formally. But there was something in the way he looked at me, a pause, a spark, a calculation that made my heart skip a beat. Trained eyes recognized trained eyes. I sensed he knew, if just for a moment, that the security guard before him was far from ordinary. Evelyn beamed, oblivious. She was presenting him with a prize, the simple, lesser sister meant to highlight her own superiority. She didn't know this moment was about to shift the balance in ways she couldn't imagine. I remembered my teenage years, the endless comparisons, the relentless pressure to measure up. Evelyn went to college, pursued a degree in communications, and started a career in local television. I quietly built a career no one knew about, a career that demanded courage, intelligence, and absolute discretion. My family had judged me by appearances, never asking what I actually did. Tonight, they were all about to learn, though not quite yet. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Evelyn posted pictures from charity brunches and local events, I was analyzing intelligence reports that could prevent terror attacks, tracking threats that could save hundreds of lives. I had learned to maintain my cover meticulously, to endure humiliation, to allow the world, including my family, to underestimate me. But that discipline came at a cost. Every condescending glance, every whispered joke, every dismissive comment had been stored like fuel, waiting for the right moment. And then the reception dinner began. Evelyn insisted on giving a speech, and naturally, she pulled me forward. I want to thank everyone for making this day so special, especially my sister, Clara. She projected every word into the microphone. Polite applause followed, but it felt hollow. Evelyn's tone dripped with implication. Clara, the cautious, ordinary, practical sister, the one who took the safe path, while Evelyn reached for the stars. I felt my stomach tighten. But I had learned to wait, to breathe, to let patience win over impulse. Nathan Brooks, standing beside Evelyn, studied me, his brow furrowed, eyes narrowing slightly. I recognized the look, the same look my commanders gave when a hidden pattern suddenly emerged, when a puzzle clicked into place. Actually, he said, voice calm but commanding, I believe there may be some confusion about Clara's work. Heads turned. Conversations halted. Evelyn blinked, her radiant smile faltering. My pulse raced. He continued, slowly, deliberately. Clara Donovan has spent the past 5 years in military intelligence operations, focusing on counterintelligence. Her work has prevented coordinated attacks and saved hundreds of lives. The room went silent. Polite murmurs turned to shocked whispers. Evelyn's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to horror as the reality dawned on her. The sister she had ridiculed, the one she had made into a cautionary tale, was a decorated intelligence officer whose work mattered far more than anyone in this room could imagine. Her carefully constructed narrative of superiority crumbled. Every smirk, every laugh, every public slight she had delivered over the years came back to haunt her in this charged, silent moment. Nathan's voice carried further, recounting specific operations, specific awards, and commendations. The guests, many military themselves, recognized the significance immediately. Phones appeared, officers straightened in their seats, and the air shifted. Respect replaced derision. The security guard, the overlooked sister, had quietly done the unimaginable. I felt a strange mixture of relief and vindication. 5 years of carrying the weight of silence, of maintaining a cover that made me appear ordinary, were finally acknowledged, not by family, but by someone whose judgment truly mattered. And yet, I remained composed. I had trained for moments like this. Evelyn, pale and trembling, struggled to find words. I never knew, she whispered. I didn't ask. I shook my head, quietly but firmly. You wouldn't have handled the truth. Not then, not ever. This is why I stayed silent. Around us, the guests whispered, checking their phones, seeing the reality for themselves. My father, who had called me a disappointment earlier, now sat frozen, wine glass half raised, staring at the daughter he had underestimated for decades. The transformation was complete. Evelyn's wedding, meant to celebrate her, had quietly become a recognition of a hidden hero. And I felt the weight of vindication, the subtle joy of truth spoken without malice, finally recognized on my terms. As the chapter closes, I realized this night would change everything: my family, my sister, even myself. The quiet observer had become visible, and the invisible threads of sacrifice were finally pulling the room into alignment with reality. The ballroom felt different now, charged, tense, electric. Conversations that had once hummed politely were replaced by whispers, broken murmurs, and the occasional sharp intake of breath. Crystal chandeliers reflected the growing astonishment in the eyes of the guests. I stood in my simple navy dress, a quiet island amid a sea of shocked faces. For 5 long years, I had carried the weight of my secret alone, and now, at my sister's wedding, it was finally being revealed. Evelyn clutched the microphone like it might anchor her to reality, though her grip was trembling. Her perfectly poised facade had crumbled, leaving behind a raw, vulnerable woman she rarely allowed anyone to see. She looked at me, searching for a flicker of emotion that would make her feel in control. But I had learned long ago how to remain composed, even when the world shifted beneath me. Colonel Nathan Brooks, standing tall beside her, was calm, collected, and undeniably commanding. His voice, deep and measured, carried across the room, cutting through the shock like a knife. Clara Donovan's work, he said, eyes locking with mine, has directly prevented coordinated attacks on civilian populations and military installations. Her intelligence has saved hundreds of lives, and she did this quietly, without recognition, without seeking glory. The room was silent. Guests who had just minutes ago shared polite glances of pity were now leaning forward, straining to hear every word. Evelyn's friends exchanged anxious looks. How could the simple, unremarkable sister she had mocked be the very person Nathan described? I took a deep breath. 5 years of hiding, of enduring my family's quiet disappointment, of letting my sister take the spotlight while I moved in shadows, it all came down to this moment. And yet, I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Nathan's words did the work my tongue never could. He continued recounting specific missions, operations that had never been publicized, the type of information no one outside the highest ranks of military intelligence could possibly know. My contributions, my sacrifices, my sleepless nights analyzing threats and protecting lives, they were laid bare before a room that dismissed me as ordinary. Evelyn's face turned from confusion to horror. I saw the color drain, leaving her pale, almost ghostly. Her eyes darted to our father, whose own expression had shifted from disinterest to disbelief. Henry Donovan had spent decades silently judging me, dismissing me as a disappointment. And now, faced with the truth, he looked broken. His hand, which had held a wine glass just moments ago, hovered mid-air, unsteady. I had no idea," Evelyn whispered, her voice trembling. "Clara, you never said." I shook my head gently. "No, because you wouldn't have listened. You would have turned it into a story about yourself. That's why I stayed silent." The words cut through the room like a quiet thunderclap. Guests shifted in their seats, whispering urgently. Phones appeared in hands as people attempted to verify the colonel's statements. Social media was already lighting up with fragments of the revelation. But none of that mattered to me. This was not for validation. This was justice in its purest, most human form. The truth finally speaking for itself. Nathan stepped forward, drawing attention back to the center of the room. He opened a folder, the official seal gleaming under the ballroom lights. "These are official commendations," he said, voice steady and firm. "Congressional Medal of Merit, Department of Defense Exceptional Civilian Service Award. Each citation recognizes Clara Donovan's exceptional dedication to protecting American lives." The guests were stunned. Some rose to their feet, military officers snapping to attention in respect. Others whispered in disbelief, trying to reconcile the image of the security guard with the decorated analyst Nathan described. Evelyn's face went through an expression I had never seen before: confusion, disbelief, shame, and then something approaching fear. I remembered all the times she had humiliated me, publicly and privately, always ensuring the world saw me as inferior. And now, the truth she had tried to bury had erupted like a dam breaking. You worked in intelligence? All this time, you never told us?" I met her gaze calmly. "You would have made it about yourself. You would have broadcast it. You wouldn't have understood discretion. I couldn't risk lives for your ego, Evelyn." Her hands trembled around the microphone. I didn't know. I didn't let her finish. 5 years of silence, of enduring her superiority, of letting our father and family believe a lie, I would not allow her excuses to comfort her. "You never asked. You never cared enough to ask. You assumed. You judged. You humiliated. That's the truth." Around us, the guests shifted uncomfortably. Some stared, unsure of whether to side with Evelyn, unsure how to process the quiet, powerful woman standing before them. Nathan's eyes softened as he glanced at me. He understood. He knew. His recognition was a balm in a room filled with judgment. "The work Clara has done," Nathan continued, voice deliberate, "required sacrifices that most people cannot even imagine. Nights without sleep, time away from friends and family, risk, real, life-threatening risk. And she did it without recognition, without complaint, without seeking attention." I felt a small surge of relief. After years of hiding, of being underestimated, of enduring the world's assumptions, the truth had finally pierced the veil. And Evelyn, she was forced to confront the reality that she had been cruel to a hero, not a failure. "Why didn't you tell us?" Evelyn whispered, almost too quiet to hear. "Why didn't you trust me?" I stepped closer, my voice firm but not unkind. "Because I had to protect people. Because I had to protect myself. Because I knew the moment I revealed the truth, you would make it about yourself. And because this is the kind of work that cannot be undone, cannot be explained in words or Instagram posts." Her shoulders sagged, and she looked away, tears streaking her makeup. For the first time, vulnerability replaced her usual poise. I "I'm sorry," she whispered finally. But I wasn't interested in forgiveness. Not yet. I had waited years for this moment, for the recognition that came not from her, but from someone who truly understood the weight of my work. I nodded once, simply. The truth was enough. Nathan placed the folder on the head table, the official commendations gleaming. I hope this makes clear why operational security and discretion are essential, even with family members, even with those we love. Clara's sacrifice kept people safe. That is what matters. The room was quiet, reverent. Guests whispered, some taking photos, others looking on in awe. Evelyn's once gleaming wedding day had become something entirely different. A silent acknowledgement of a sister who had been invisible, underestimated, and yet quietly heroic. Our father, Henry Donovan, finally found his voice. He approached slowly, hands trembling, eyes glistening. "Clara, I didn't know. I was wrong. All those years." I looked at him, feeling a mixture of relief and lingering pain. "You could have asked. You could have shown interest. But you didn't. That's the truth, too." The silence stretched, heavy and thick. Evelyn finally stepped outside to the balcony, shaking, tears flowing freely. I followed her silently. She gripped the marble railing, staring at the city skyline. The cool night air bit at our skin, the distant hum of traffic below, adding a strange soundtrack to her remorse. "5 years, Clara," she said, her voice breaking. "5 years you let me think I was better. 5 years you let Dad treat me like a disappointment. 5 years you let me joke about your job." I met her gaze, unwavering. 5 years you never asked. 5 years you never cared enough to know the truth. She turned to me fully, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "You could have told me. You could have trusted me." I tilted my head, calm but piercing. "Could I? Be honest, Evelyn. If I had told you 3 years ago, would you have understood? Would you have kept it private? Or would you have made it about yourself?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. She knew the answer. She had always made everything about her. And now, faced with the undeniable truth, she couldn't. "I'm sorry," she whispered finally. The word fragile, late, insufficient. I nodded, accepting it, but not forgiving fully. The room below had shifted. Guests who had ignored me now asked questions, sought explanations, and offered admiration. Evelyn's day of glory had been quietly overtaken by a revelation she could not control. The lesson was clear. Revenge did not need to be orchestrated. Truth delivered at the right time was more powerful than any argument, any confrontation. And for the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of peace. My work, my sacrifices, my hidden heroism, all were finally recognized, on my terms. As the night drew on, I realized that this wedding had changed everything. The way my family saw me, the way my sister understood the consequences of her words, and the way I understood my own strength. The quiet observer had become visible, and the invisible threads of years of sacrifice had finally been acknowledged, leaving a profound impact that would never be forgotten.